The New Orleans Saints are 3-6 and are most recently coming off of a loss to the Baltimore Ravens at home on Monday night. The Saints went all in this year as they made a big trade with the Philadelphia Eagles to acquire a second first-round pick in 2022 while giving up a first-round pick in the loaded 2023 NFL Draft. They promoted Dennis Allen to be the head coach after being the team's longtime defensive coordinator. Allen was the Raiders head coach from 2012 through the first 4 games of 2014 with the then Oakland Raiders before being fired after putting together an 8-28 lifetime record as their head coach. They went all in with who they thought would be Jameis Winston as their team's starting quarterback and a player who was 5-2 as a starter in 2021 before tearing his ACL. Unfortunately for the Saints, things have went anything but according to plan this year, and their future at the moment looks very, very bleak. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing how things got here, what the immediate future for the Saints looks like, and what they can do moving forward. And there is a lot to break down in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. One of the most frustrating things with the 2022 New Orleans Saints is the usage of Taysom Hill, or in some games like on Monday against the Ravens, the lack of usage. Whatever you think of Taysom Hill, gimmick, good player if used correctly, or somewhere in between, he has been productive when his number's been called this year. This was best showcased in a game against the Seattle Seahawks, and actually the NFC West division-leading Seahawks, when Taysom had 9 carries for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. And within that game, he also threw a singular pass which went for 22 yards and, not surprisingly, a touchdown. So long story short, Taysom had the ball in his hands for 10 plays in that game and contributed 4 touchdowns, and the team won. Now fast forward to week 9 against the Ravens, and Taysom Hill had 1 carry, which still went for 6 yards by the way, and threw the ball 1 time, which was a completion for 13 yards. Now, is Taysom a franchise quarterback or the guy you want and lean on in ways the Bills do with Josh Allen and the Chiefs do with Patrick Mahomes? No, absolutely not. But Taysom has proven time and time again he is a force with the ball in his hands, and he always has to be accounted for strictly due to how unique of a player he is. And in a game where your team puts up just 13 points at home, by the way, and a double-digit loss, is unacceptable. And when the plan was to have Jameis Winston as their starting quarterback this year, one thing that wasn't factored in was how much, or in this case, how little he checks it down to running backs. This isn't meant to come across as mean, but a big part of Alvin Kamara's game is catching checkdowns, making a guy miss, and picking up anywhere from 7 to 9 yards at a time. In a lot of ways, it's an extension of the run game, and it's a big reason why Alvin has never had 1,000 yards rushing in a season. It's not like Alvin doesn't have the talent, because he is truly one of the most talented offensive weapons in the entire NFL. But when you can bypass having him get hit by defensive linemen and force him into a one-on-one situation with a linebacker, that's a matchup the Saints would be willing to take every single time. And in the 2 games he played with Jameis this season, because he missed week 2 with a ribs injury, Alvin had just 5 catches in 2 games. And in the 5 games he's played since, he's had 31 receptions for 300 yards, which over the course of a 17-game season would put him on pace for 105 receptions for over 1,000 receiving yards. I don't think this is groundbreaking information to say Andy Dalton is not the long-term answer at quarterback. But as simple as this concept is, get Alvin the football, get Taysom the football, and if you can't do either, there's a hell of a receiver to get the ball to who's tearing it up in his rookie season, and that's Chris Olave. Chris has played in 8 games in 2022, and through those 8 games has 43 receptions for 618 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, and for a full 17-game season, he would be on pace for 91 receptions for over 1,300 yards and 4 touchdowns. And for as much as I like Olave and think that he will be a good player there for a long time, a good receiver does not take a team from 3-6 to 12-5 into the second round of the postseason or even further. If you're thinking, well, look at the Bengals and what Jamar Chase did. He had a truly generational rookie season, had or has a great quarterback in Joe Burrow, and has two good receivers around him as well in T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So there are a lot more factors into it than that. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I will never understand why the Saints made the trade with the Eagles they did to acquire another first-round pick for this year when it was a consensus this draft class was not as good as years past and was not as good as what the 2023 draft class will be. One of their first-round picks in Trevor Penning has not played a game yet due to injury, and I understand injury is a part of the game, but that only makes this trade look worse, considering the Eagles came out of the first round with Jordan Davis, A.J. Brown, a Saints first next year, which is looking very good at the moment, and a 2024 Saints second-round pick. This is why I think the Saints' future in a lot of ways looks very, very dim. The first round pick they have at the moment is in the top 10 and a pick that would very much help this team out. This team could use a player like Jalen Carter from Georgia if he falls to them, which is possible due to the quarterbacks that will be taken at the top of the first round. Or they could use a Will Anderson as an edge rusher, and this team could use to try and replace an aging Cam Jordan, who will be 34 at the start of 2023, and a player who will not play forever. They have 6 picks in the 2023 draft right now, and they would benefit by having as many picks as they can get their hands on. The Saints are also notorious for having salary cap issues, and next year is no different. The highest paid player on their roster for 2023 is receiver Michael Thomas, who is an interesting case. He was on an all-time pace through the first 4 seasons of his career, but has played in just 10 games over the last 3 seasons. He is due $28 million in 2023 per over the cap. Cam Jordan is due $25 million next year at 34 years old, and Marshawn Lattimore and tackle Ryan Ramczyk are each going to make over $20 million as well. If all of these guys were performing at the level they were when they earned these contracts, and especially in Michael Thomas's case, it would be fine because there truly would be nothing to say. You have to pay for talent. They were some of the best at their positions a few years ago. And to be clear, Lattimore, aside from a game against the Vikings, hasn't played bad in 2022, and neither has Cam Jordan or Ramczyk. But that's the biggest thing here: health. Paying a player $28 million next year for a player that's played 10 games in 3 seasons and not having a first-round pick is a recipe for disaster. And not surprisingly, they are 3-6 and will probably miss the playoffs for the second consecutive season. With their cap situation and how pressed they are going to be, this will limit what they can do next offseason. Of course, there are ways to work around this, and the Saints have for several years. They are seemingly tight against the cap every single year. However, it makes it a lot more difficult when 4 players are due over $20 million, and a 5th in Andres Pete is due $18 million. Again, this is per over the cap. Head coach Dennis Allen lifetime is 11-34 in the NFL, and as we said, with no first-round pick next year, it's not as simple as, okay, let's sign Ian Book and play him for the rest of the season and effectively tank so we can hit the rebuild button. That would please a lot of Eagles fans and piss off a lot of Saints fans. Which brings me to the next point, and that's that the Saints should blow it up. I don't think there's a point in running this back next year with this group of guys, knowing you are more than likely not going to win a ring. It is insanely difficult to win a single Super Bowl title, and I don't think Jameis or Andy or whoever would lead it next year will happen. And as we said, the money obviously limits who they could bring in. I do believe 2023 will be a transition period for this team, and I do think they should ditch the last of the Sean Payton and Drew Brees era and effectively start over. Since Drew's final game, this team has won a combined 12-14 and does not look like they are going to be seriously competing anytime soon. It's one thing to be competing in the NFC South in 2022, and as I record this, they are technically one game out of the division lead, but it's a down year for every team where the Bucs and Falcons are tied atop the NFC South. It's another to be competing for an NFC title game or for a Super Bowl. And with the disappointing play calling, with Dennis Allen, who is a perfect example of a coach that's a good coordinator and not a good head coach, again, an 11-34 lifetime record shows this, and with this team in perpetual cap hell, take a year to get everything smoothed out, figure out how you're going to compete in the long run, and come back strong in 2024. Trade the pieces you can and try and get back a 2023 first-round pick, because this team is going to need all the young players they can to build around for a long, long time. They need a youth movement, they need a new head coach, and they need to find an answer at the quarterback position in the post-Drew Brees era. And I can't wait to see how they attack all of these team needs. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.